please welcome the Interim President of Stony Brook University, Dr. Michael Bernstein.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. It's an honor and a pleasure to present this year's State of the University address, and over the course of the next 50 to 55 minutes, I would like to share with you a variety of information and insights about our rankings and recognition, our research, scholarship, and art making, our honors and awards, our students, our facilities, our budgets and finance, our global reach, our international impact, and several other topics. But before I do that, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of some very special guests and ask them to rise and be acknowledged by this audience. First, I'd like to welcome Kevin Law, the chair of the Stony Brook Council. Kevin, please be acknowledged. Thank you for being here, Kevin. I'd also like to recognize Stony Brook Council member Chris Hahn and Council member Shahir Khan. I'd also like to recognize New York State Assemblyman Mike Fitzpatrick, who's with us today. Thanks for coming, Mike. And representing Governor Cuomo, Teresa Santoro. Teresa. And representing Assemblymember Kimberly Jean-Pierre, Yarol Gonzalez. Thank you for being here. Let me begin again by welcoming all of you. I'm Michael Bernstein, the Interim President of Stony Brook University. My pronouns are he, his, him. It's an honor to welcome you here today. I would like to begin by talking about rankings and recognition for our institution. There's been a lot of distinction this past year, and it's important that we pause and recognize our accomplishments. We were ranked this past year as the top public school in the state of New York by the Wall Street Journal. We were identified by U.S. News as one of the top 40 public universities in the United States. We were also recognized by Money Magazine as one of the top 50 best value institutions in the United States. I'll have more to say about that in a moment. And we were recognized by MarketWatch as being in the top 10 of institutions in the nation that facilitate meaningful and statistically significant socioeconomic mobility for its students. This is an important accomplishment on behalf of our institution. I think it demonstrates the fact, something I've shared with an array of faculty and staff with whom I've been visiting over the past few weeks, it demonstrates the fact that we are an elite, but not an elitist institution. And that's something that is very much part of our DNA here at Stony Brook. So let's talk about personnel. We have a number of new members of the leadership team at the university, and I'd like to acknowledge them today. Our colleague Minghua Zhang, professor of marine and atmospheric sciences, is serving as our interim provost and senior vice president. Very grateful to Minghua. Matt Whalen, who's been part of the university for a while, has assumed new duties as Vice President for Enrollment Management and Strategy here at the institution. Eric Wertheimer, a professor of English, has joined us as our new Dean of the Graduate School and Vice Provost for Graduate and Professional Education. Joins us from Arizona State. Annette Wysocki is our new Dean of Nursing, comes to us from UMass Amherst, a specialist on wound repair and wound management. We're delighted to have Annette on board. Carol Gomes has stepped up to serve as our interim chief executive officer of Stony Brook Hospital. She's been with us for several years in a key deputy role. She's taken on the leadership role. Delighted to have Carol leading our superb hospital. And Stacy Gropak has joined us as our new Dean of Health Technology and Management. She comes to us from Long Island University. She's a specialist in pediatric rehabilitation. She just began a few weeks ago, so welcome to Stacy. I'll also mention a group of additional permanent leadership assignments that are important to note as we start the new year. Sarita Bhatia, our colleague in chemistry and chemical engineering, is our new Vice Provost for Faculty Affairs. Mark Sands, a radiologist who joins us from the Cleveland Clinic, is our new Chief Medical Officer at the hospital. Pat Malone, many of you know. Pat's been part of corporate and executive education and the School for Professional Development for many years, has assumed new duties as the Associate Vice President for Professional Education. So congratulations to Pat. And Dean Tufts is our new Vice President for Facilities and Services. He joins us from the Navy, so don't mess with him, okay? We also made a series of interim appointments over the past few months. You may recall there have been communications about this. Let's note them. Laura Lindenfeld, our colleague in journalism, a specialist in science communication, is now serving as Interim Dean of Journalism. Deborah Lowenklein is our Interim Vice President for Advancement. She stepped up into that role. Yijin Chin is our Acting Vice President and Vice Provost for Global Affairs, colleague in biomedical engineering. And Jarvis Watson is our Interim Chief Diversity Officer. I want to thank all of these colleagues for stepping up into these important leadership roles on behalf of our university. So let me take a moment just to articulate, once again, I've done this in several settings, but I think these issues can't be repeated enough. I want to articulate our key strategic commitments going forward at our institution. And as I do so, I want to start by emphasizing, as I have mentioned before, the importance of shared governance to our institution. Identifying and articulating strategic commitments is a product of shared governance, where the leadership of all the constituencies of our university are brought together to debate, discuss, share information, and formulate good decisions and find plans. And in that regard, I do want to acknowledge, once again, some of the people I welcomed and others who are a key part of the shared governance structure of our university. I mentioned Kevin Law, the chair of our Stony Brook Council, Shahir Khan, the head of our undergraduate student government, Chin Zhang, who's the head of our graduate student government, Nancy Toms, the president of our university senate, and Rob DeBrouwer, I'd like to acknowledge him too, who is our new head of the Alumni Association, a 1987 graduate of our university. These people and many others are part of the shared governance team that allows us to pursue these strategies most effectively and with the greatest import. It's important we note that and acknowledgement as we articulate what these strategic goals are. First of all, we need always to facilitate faculty, staff, and student success. Where our faculty's mission is secured, our students are graduating on time and securing the education they need, and where our staff are effective and fulfilled in their roles, our university flourishes. Job one, their success. Two, we need always to promote and strengthen diversity and inclusive excellence, and I'm going to return to that topic in a moment and talk a little bit more about the whys and wherefores about those protocols. Three, we need always to manage our operations efficiently, effectively, and prudently. And when I say manage our operations, yes, I mean finances and budget, but I also mean personnel, human resources, and environmental resources. All of these are part of the ways in which we manage our operations and effectively, efficiently, and sustainably accomplish our goals as an institution. Additionally, It is our mission, our task, the expectation of the state of New York that we provision excellent, state-of-the-art, accessible health care, a big part of who we are at Stony Brook. We are also tasked and expected to enhance the economic development and vitality of our state, and in particular of our region and of our island. We need to be an outstanding employer of choice. We need to interact with our employees in fulfilling and useful ways, allowing them to secure their career goals and dreams. And finally, we need always to be a worthy and thoughtful neighbor to all the communities in which our campuses subsist. It's a challenging list of to-dos, but it's a key part of what defines us as the excellent institution we are. So I mentioned diversity and inclusive excellence, and I want to pause here for a moment to talk about our commitments in this area, our efforts, and as I said a moment ago, the whys and the wherefores. We are committed to diversity and inclusive excellence, first and foremost because we are committed to equity and fairness. We believe that access to the opportunities that our institution represents should not be restricted on any basis that is anchored in bigotry or exclusion. The second reason we're committed to diversity and inclusive excellence is that we resolutely believe, as scholars, as scientists, as educators, as artists, that a diverse and inclusive population generates optimal results in research, in scholarship, in art making, in education, in mentorship, in professional service. The more diverse that population, the better the results, and certainly the more effective the education we provide to our students. And I'll just mention, because I happen to be an economic historian and I can never resist to give an economic historical example, there's a recent op-ed piece in the New York Times this past weekend that noted in the 1920s, when a series of very restrictive acts were passed to restrict immigration access to the United States, the economic growth potential of the United States fell because of the impact, the negative impact of those immigration restrictions on productivity and technological change. So diversity and inclusive excellence are good for equity and fairness. They're good for scholarly and educational outcomes, and quite frankly, it's good for the economy. So we are committed. Thank you. We are committed to diversity and inclusive excellence, and we have tasked a special team to develop and implement a plan to sustain and improve the diversity of our community, to expand our efforts, to diversify our faculty, staff, and student cadres, and at the same time, to expand educational, research, and other service efforts to ensure that our students can thrive in this diverse community that we think is so essential to their development and their progress. And that involves creating a campus climate that is welcoming, inclusive, safe, and secure. And finally, it is very important that we establish a culture of accountability and assessment around these issues. We should be measuring what we do and how we do it, and we should also be holding ourselves accountable to the outcomes. We have invested a fair amount of resources already in our diversity initiatives, close to $1.7 million. You can see in the graph behind me, the overwhelming proportion of this investment is in people, faculty, staff, students. We've also made a great deal of investment in community activities, educational efforts. We've created a Center for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Training and Education to work with our search committees, to deal with issues of implicit bias and the framing of search processes that may distort outcomes in ways that are not supportive of the diversity agenda. And we are also deeply connected with and engaged with the Prodigy effort from our authorities and leadership at SUNY in Albany. Prodigy is an acronym that stands for Promoting Recruitment, Opportunity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Growth. It's a system-wide initiative at SUNY to support the recruitment of a diverse and always sustainable, inclusive population on all our campuses. And I do want to give a little shout out here again to Jarvis Watson, who's been leading these efforts effectively for months and months, and who is leading us to a new future with respect to diversity and inclusion. One final point in this regard. You noticed I started the presentation by referencing my own pronouns. Today happens to be International Pronouns Day. We didn't plan that, by the way. We just became aware of this. And, you know, this agenda of reflecting on pronouns and the pronouns that people choose and recognizing diversity in that respect, it's new, and for some people a little bit disarming and disorienting. But I would emphasize, as I tried to demonstrate in my opening, the simple act of asking is a way to demonstrate at our institution that we are open, transparent, and welcoming of new initiatives with respect to diversity and inclusion. Happy International Pronouns Day, everyone. So I mentioned our mission in terms of economic impact. We continue to be a vital contributor to the economy of our island and region. Some of the essential data in this regard are captured on this slide. A $7.23 billion impact this past fiscal year. As I've pointed out to some faculty and staff groups with which I've met recently, given the state's investment in the campus, this return of about $7.25 billion is a pretty good rate of return on the investment. And you'll also note here the important role we play in provisioning jobs, generating tax revenue, and of course in serving as a key employer here on Long Island. Let's turn to our creative mission in research, in scholarship, and in art making. I think our success in this regard is dramatic in the past couple of years and continues in a consistent and stable fashion. Here are some rudimentary data that demonstrate that. Our total spending on research, so-called research and development activities, has been steadily rising over the past few years. Last year, for which we have the data, 2018, $245 million is a record high for us. And similarly, sponsored research, the grants and contracts we're bringing in from external agencies, has continued to rise each and every year. Last year, at almost $192 million, this is a record high. And I want to give a shout out here to Rich Reeder and his team in the Office of Research for all the work they've done to stimulate this kind of growth and expansion in our creative activities. We talk a lot about interdisciplinary research. I'm going to give a few examples here of some of the very impressive developments in interdisciplinary research in the past year. They are not exclusive. And when I conclude my remarks, I'm going to have more to say about the interdisciplinary agenda. But for example, with respect to artificial intelligence, we are a uniquely well-poised institution in terms of the excellence of our faculty and staff and the potential and capability of our students to drive enormous advances in the development of machine learning and artificial intelligence. And nowhere is that opportunity demonstrated more vividly than in the intersection between the engineering sciences and medicine. In addition, in energy-based research, we have accomplished a great deal in the past year, research that focuses on the storage of energy, the development of new materials to generate energy, and to deliver energy in efficient and sustainable ways. We are the only university right now in the state, and one of only 3 nationwide that have received 2 major investments from the National Science Foundation in establishing energy frontier research centers. And just recently, the Advanced Research Projects Agency Energy, ARPA-E as you see up there, has provided support for upwards of $7 million of research. But it's not simply in the so-called STEM-based fields where we have been so productive and so effective. You see here that our colleague Jessica Schlueter in psychology has received a major grant from the National Institutes of Health, the first Stony Brook faculty member in clinical psychology, to receive such a grant to pursue her very important work on teenage depression and management of diagnostics in that very important area. Similarly, in the humanities, a lot of cross-cutting research that holds the promise of transforming our understanding of the cultures and communities within which our university subsists. Adrián Pérez Melgoza, our colleague in Hispanic languages and literatures, has been developing a map of the Latino-Latina communities here on Long Island, a very complex and variegated community, in fact, a map that will not only enable us to have a comprehensive appreciation of those cultures, but perhaps even more importantly, allow us to understand the best ways to formulate policy, social, and cultural initiatives that make sense here on our island. And finally, as an example, Josh Teplitsky, our colleague in history, has been engaged in research that seeks to apply digital learning and digital techniques to understand, in this case, the evolution and distribution of Jewish literature and Judaica. So the goal here, again, is to develop a more comprehensive set of data on a particular phenomenon. But what's also interesting is that these data analytics will also enable historians and other humanists to better understand the ways in which urban centers and regions play roles in distributing book-led culture, something of intense importance to historians for decades, but not previously driven by digital analytics. So these are just some of the examples that give us a sense of the richness and the multidisciplinary standing and footing of our university, something we should never forget. Our university is a global institution, you all know that. So why don't we pause for a minute and talk a little bit about that global impact. We are the first among our peers in the SUNY system in terms of our sending students abroad and enabling them to have an active international experience. We know that that sort of international experience is a priceless foundation for excellence in learning and maturation. We have active partnerships with literally hundreds of institutions, and our students have access to an enormous array of opportunities and programs. And I would emphasize that our international student enrollment, despite the fact that nationwide many institutions are struggling to maintain those numbers, has actually been rising. And you can see here in this slide the impressive numbers that we have been able to achieve and that we hope to sustain in the years ahead, making our campus global in the truest sense. And here, too, I want to call out Jun Liu, who had been serving as our Vice Provost for Global Affairs, Yijin Chen, whom I mentioned earlier, who's now in the acting position, and Yuan Wang, our colleague in admissions, all of whom work very, very hard to see to it that not only that we're reaching out to recruit the very best in international students, but to ensure that these students know that here at Stony Brook, this is a welcoming, inclusive, and secure environment. Finally, our faculty, of course, are actively engaged around the world in a variety of research projects. You're familiar with some of them. I list just a few here. The Center Valbio has been actively involved in research and efforts to find ways to deliver life-saving technology and treatments to very remote areas in the developing world. The Turkana Basin Institute, I think many of you know, is paving the way in trend-setting research on human evolution and human origins, right now fast developing the first master's program in human evolution on the African continent. And then, of course, our colleagues in physics and in the basic sciences are engaged in an array of collaboration. Here, some examples, collaborations in Japan and in China with respect to the fundamentals of matter. So let me talk about Stony Brook Medicine, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a key part of our mission and an enormous part of our footprint and our operations, both here in Stony Brook itself and on other campuses. The Medical and Research Translation Building will open in a couple of weeks. On November 1st, this will be a facility that will provide an important site for transformational multidisciplinary research in the life sciences, in engineering, and in medical care. And tomorrow, literally tomorrow, we will have the pleasure of cutting the ribbon on Children's Hospital. Yes, hooray. This hospital will be the very best pediatric facility on the island. It will have the only pediatric intensive care unit on the island. It will have some of the best facilities for children's care on the island and, frankly, in the region and in New York State. I couldn't be prouder of the entire Stony Brook Medicine team, all their hard work in bringing children's online. Additionally, the Stony Brook Medicine team has been working hard to elaborate our network of treatment facilities and hospitals. I think many of you know that we now have Southampton Hospital and Eastern Long Island Hospital as part of the Stony Brook Medicine network. There may be more to come. The point here is that Stony Brook Medicine is expanding its reach and its impact across the island that we serve. Stony Brook Medicine has also engaged in the delivery of transformative ambulatory and emergent services. Here's one example: the creation of a mobile stroke unit that will allow our practitioners to intervene directly in emergent events on behalf of people victimized by stroke out there in our region. You see here a picture of one such person, Bill Rothmeyer, who was literally saved by the intervention of this unit. Probably if the unit didn't exist, he would not have survived the event that he had. This is the first of its kind mobile unit in Long Island. And then, of course, there's the hospital. I mentioned earlier the work of our leadership team in the hospital. Stony Brook University Hospital is recognized as one of the top 2% of hospitals nationwide. It's been identified as being of supreme quality and value in certain areas like cardiac care, orthopedics, coronary intervention, and related areas. Again, I think we have to acknowledge the enormous work and impact of the team in Stony Brook Medicine and what they've been able to accomplish. And I'll give a shout out here to Ken Kashansky and his entire leadership team who have done such a great job with Stony Brook Medicine. And then there's one other part of Stony Brook Medicine I wanted to highlight today. As you see behind me, the Long Island State Veterans Home. So every state has at least one, if not more, of these veterans' homes. President Abraham Lincoln, during the American Civil War, signed legislation that started the practice of creating veterans' homes all across the country. We have 5 such veterans' homes in New York State. Long Island State is one of them. It is the largest of them. And I will say without fear of contradiction, it is the best of them. And the Long Island State Home, it's about 350 beds. It's a large facility. It has an enormously high occupancy rate, not surprising, given the quality of the work it does. It serves as a major teaching facility for our medical, nursing, and health technician students and our dental students. And I might add, it provides a unique service to our veterans, to their spouses and registered domestic partners, and to Gold Star parents, those who've lost children in uniform. Can't say too much about this remarkable mission at the State Veterans Home, and I salute Fred Skanga and his team for the work they do. Thank you, Fred. Okay, now I guess I get to bum you out and talk about budget and financial planning. Just kidding, just kidding. We've made remarkable progress on stabilizing our budget. I think you all know that. And it's worth emphasizing that that progress is all the product of the very hard work that faculty and staff and student leadership have done to try to manage our resources in very challenging circumstances and to manage those resources efficiently and well. We've tried to streamline operations. We've tried to monitor hiring in a very aggressive way, as most of you know, including freezing hiring in some contexts. That's been difficult. We've tried to enhance revenue, both from various tuition and fee increases that have been granted by the state government, but also by trying to generate revenue through online education and other initiatives for which there are robust markets. In all these respects, we're trying to do what any sustainable and stable enterprise does, which is to enhance revenue and control costs. It's a key part of what we must do to maintain the excellence and the salience of the mission of our organization. I do want to acknowledge, though, that there's a cost in all the efforts that we have pursued so far. It's tough when we're understaffed in certain units. It's tough when we delay hiring to replace losses in certain units. Our staff and faculty are working double time, triple time to try to make up for some of these delays and stretching of resources. And I would be remiss in acknowledging all our progress in also not at the same time acknowledging the pressures, the challenges, and quite frankly, the difficulties that so many of you have faced in this endeavor. Cannot thank you enough. There's sunshine down that road. I'll have more to say about that later. But without your efforts, we would not be anywhere near stabilizing the budget as we have today. As we move forward and try to identify areas for investment and priority, we want to always emphasize we will invest in our students, we will invest in our faculty, we will invest with a view towards sustaining and strengthening diversity and inclusion across our organization, and we will always support the multiple missions of our university. That's the prime directive, that's the compass heading, that's how we frame our best decisions. I would also emphasize strategy is a difficult game. Strategy means making choices. Choices implicitly and explicitly means that sometimes you have to say no. And many in the faculty leadership have heard me say during my years in the provost office, our university can be great in anything it wants. It cannot be great in everything it wants. We have got to make choices. And that's hard to do. And the best way to do it, hearkening back to my earlier comments, is through shared governance structures that mobilize effective data and metrics to drive optimal, transparent, and credible, accountable decisions. Let's talk about facilities for a minute. We are slated to bring a variety of new facilities online. We're slated to renovate a bunch of facilities, so let's call them out. The union is going to open, yes, in March. I joined the university in the fall of 2016. I've never seen the union. I can't wait. It's going to be a marvelous facility. A new building is under construction on our research campus. Some of you may have noted this, the Innovation and Discovery Center. It will provide important space for some of our corporate partners that have had engaged in startup research in some of the original facilities on the research campus and are now trying to elaborate their activities in this new IDC, Innovation and Discovery Center. There'll also be some academic space in the building for our faculty researchers. We have an indoor practice facility under construction. This will transform the opportunities for our student athletes to train and prepare for competition. I'll have more to say about our athletics enterprise in a moment. We have new residence halls either in design or under construction at the Tabler site and at the West Apartments, Building K. Both of these projects will ultimately provide hundreds of more beds for us to accommodate students who would like to have residence on campus. And then we have renovations being planned. The chemistry building needs renovation. The Jacob Javits Lecture Hall, in case you haven't been paying any attention, needs renovation. I appreciate that people can smile and laugh about that. It's tough in that building, I get it. And we have a variety of parking and transportation projects that we're beginning to scope and look at. We know we have to invest in these areas. Again, I want to acknowledge some of the difficulties here. Every time we touch a project and try to start a renovation project, there's the good news that we're going to have a renovated facility. The bad news is there's going to be a lot of pain and suffering on the way. Perhaps some of you have been driving Stony Brook Road recently. Or some of you have been trying to navigate in the administration building parking garage and wondering how to get to your favorite parking spot. Not nice, I get it, but at the same time, because of your support, because of your willingness to work through these challenges, we will get to a better outcome downstream with better facilities and better operations. So I salute your patience and understanding, and yes, where relevant and when appropriate, your criticisms and suggestions about how we can improve what we're doing in this important arena. Finally, with respect to facilities, we always want to note the impact of our operations on the environment in which we operate. We're mindful that we're responsible for some 18% of all the power consumed by SUNY combined. That's a big footprint. And we're also mindful of the fact that we consume about 8% of all the power in state-owned buildings. So anything and everything we do to make our operations more efficient and more sustainable is going to yield important results with respect to the environment here in our region and, of course, across the state. And I'm very proud to say that because of our efforts here on the part of our facilities team, we have succeeded in reducing campus energy usage by 16% to date, and we will continue to push that needle. I know I'm using an old metaphor. We're trying to push that digital readout farther and farther as we make more investments in this area. So let me turn now to awards and honors. We talked about recognition for our institution. Let's talk about recognition for our people, because it's our people, faculty, staff, and students, who make this place go. And it's because of the superb quality of what all the people at our institution do that our institution is recognized for its excellence and impact. First, staff awards. This year, we had upwards of almost a dozen staff colleagues recognized by the Chancellor's Office for excellence in their work. And I want to call them out here in this slide: Martha, James, Janice, Dorothy, Jennifer, Diane, Susan, Diana, Ed, Sheila, and Anne-Marie. I want to salute all of them for their accomplishment and the excellence of what they do. Thank you. One particular member of our staff, apropos, of course, of what we just discussed with respect to sustainability and environmental impact, deserves special recognition, and that's Tom Lanzalotta, our campus energy manager, who was recognized regionally for the excellence of his work in achieving these new sustainability and energy efficient goals. So congratulations to Tom. Students. I want you to take a look at this slide and the next slide, and I'll toggle back between the two. Sorry. 10 Fulbright scholars. Here's 5 of them. Here's the other 5. This is an all-time record for our university, and I want you to notice, looking at these two slides, go back and forth again, the diversity not only of who these students are, but the fields they represent. Couldn't be prouder of them. Humanities, social science, basic science. And again, that's a record. That's a record in Fulbrights. We'll probably see more in the years ahead. We had 3 Goldwater scholars this past year. The Goldwater scholarships are focused in the STEM areas. We're very proud of these 3 students. And then we had several colleagues take up inaugural appointment in endowed faculty chairs, and you see the list here. Endowed chairs are the coin of the realm at research universities. They provide resources in support of the creative enterprise, they recognize excellence, and they establish visibility and standing in a field. And I'm very proud of Hal, Arindam, Karina, Anissa, Pat, Ellen, and Eric, and I salute all of them, and I congratulate them on their appointment to endowed chairs. We also had a record crop of SUNY distinguished professors this year, about almost a dozen of them. You can see that 9 of our colleagues were elevated to appointment as SUNY distinguished professors. 1 colleague was appointed as a distinguished service professor, and 1 as a distinguished SUNY librarian. We have the largest cadre of distinguished professors in the Distinguished Faculty Academy at SUNY. Very proud of all these colleagues, and I congratulate each and every one of them. There are a few distinctions we should call out one by one. Here's one of them. Misha Lyubich, our colleague in mathematics, was elected a Fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. Bill Studier and Ken Koshansky were elected Fellows of the National Academy of Inventors. Congratulations to both of them. Howardina Pindell, our colleague in studio art, was recognized with the 2019 Artists Legacy Foundation Award, a great accomplishment for Howardina. Heather Lynch became the first member of our faculty to win a Blavatnik Award. 3 such awards are given every year in the life sciences, in chemistry, and in quantitative sciences. Heather received this year's award in the life sciences. Congratulations to Heather. I think some of you saw the communications about this year's Breakthrough Prize. Peter von Nieuwenhuizen received this very important distinction in physics. Congratulations to Peter. And Memming Park, our colleague in neurosciences, was recognized with the Stony Brook Discovery Prize for his work on states of consciousness. We're very proud of Memming. Congratulations to him. Ken Dill, many of you know, gifted leader of the Laufer Center for Computational Biology, received the Delbruck Prize in Biological Physics this year, a great honor in recognition of Ken's leadership. 2 of our colleagues in mathematics received the Veblen Prize in Geometry, Yuzhong Chen and Simon Donaldson. Great distinction for our math department. And 2 colleagues in English were nationally recognized this year. Andrew Newman received a fellowship from the Guggenheim Foundation, a tremendous accomplishment in the humanities. And Rowan Ricardo Phillips received a Penn ESPN Writing Award, so congratulations to them. And I want to conclude on awards and honors with this recognition. This year, we inaugurated an Outstanding Faculty Mentor Award process. These are our 3 inaugural laureates this year. I want to congratulate Lisa, Daniela, and Aurora. The importance of mentoring, especially for our early career stage faculty, is very important. Their success depends on effective mentoring by more experienced faculty within their disciplines and even beyond. And with reference to this award and its inauguration this year, I also want to give a shout out to Stella Tsirka, the former Vice Provost for Faculty Affairs. It was her idea to create this award, and she led the process of its establishment. So congratulations to these colleagues. Can't do a presentation on the university without talking about philanthropy. So let's pause for a moment and talk about the incredible support that our communities have demonstrated for our institution through commitments of their time, their energy, their insight, and yes, their treasure. Very important. We had enormously successful fundraising results this past year, about $78 million raised. What's very interesting here is the number of donors. You see some of the data here in terms of sheer numbers. We continue to expand our reach and our impact and advancement. It's also quite striking to see both the number of first-time new donors that we succeeded in identifying and engaging, and the engagement and commitment of faculty and staff. So I want to take a moment right here to thank all of you, the Stony Brook community itself, who have seen fit to commit your support directly for all the great things that our university does. Thank you very much. We will have another Giving Day. We had an inaugural Giving Day this past year, you may remember. Very successful, as you can see here on the slide, a couple of thousand donors. There were matching gifts that were accomplished in the Giving Day itself. We're going to schedule another one. So we'll have another Giving Day this April 2020. So mark your calendars. It was a good day. People seemed to enjoy it. And of course, the results and support were terrific. Again, thank you very much. You know, just a word on philanthropy. I've said this to many of you in different settings. Nobody gives you money because you need it. People give you money because they're inspired and committed to something you do. And so I think these results demonstrate the powerful ability of our university to demonstrate to others that what we do is meaningful and worth supporting. And that's something I think all of us should be very proud of and always be careful to note each and every day. Student success and student life. Big part of what we do here is all about our students. So let's just take a moment to note what we've been able to achieve. And I want to emphasize the point I made earlier in my remarks. We are an elite, but not an elitist institution. What we accomplish with our students is remarkable because of the quality of the accomplishment, as we'll see, but especially so because we serve a diverse and inclusive population like few other research universities in this country, and we do it in ways that generate measurable, effective results. You all know the key statistic: roughly 40% of every incoming class that comes to our university is composed of students who are the first members of their families to go to college. There are virtually, there's just a handful of research universities of the quality of ours that could make that claim. We measure student success in many ways. One of the most important is graduation rates. It's not the only way, but it's obviously a key diagnostic. And so note here, with respect to the 4-year graduation rate, in other words, what percentage of your students who enter in a given fall 4 years later are out the door with their degrees in hand, you can see here that we achieved a 17 percentage point increase in the 4-year grad rate over a 6-year period. That's stunning. So stunning, by the way, I can tell you that our student success team is regularly contacted by institutions across the country. They basically want to know, how are you doing this? How did you manage that? And I, in particular, want to salute Charlie Robbins, the Vice Provost for Undergraduate Education, and the entire student success team, who every week are driving these results. With respect to graduation rate, again, I don't mean to constantly reduce things to dollars and cents, but they can be useful as markers of what we're able to accomplish. Look at these results. The increase in the graduation rate that I've just mentioned, we estimate generates something on the order of $125 million in benefits over that 7-year period in the form of, 1, savings in tuition and fees. Speaking as a parent, I salute that. That's terrific. And of course, a little bit over $100 million in greater secured earnings as these students transit into the labor force. So again, just looking at it from a dollars and cents perspective, student success makes sense. We know that student success is not simply an academic enterprise. Yes, classroom, laboratory, studio, performance hall, these are places where students achieve a great deal, but a lot of learning and the ingredients of their success anywhere depend on what's going on outside of those venues. So it's important that our student support services are effective and constantly evolving to meet the needs of a new generation of learners. And I want to acknowledge the student affairs team led by Rick Gateau and his colleagues, who have seen to it that we are achieving every year steady improvement and effectiveness in the services we provide our students. The Red Book is now a new map for all students, faculty, and staff. It's digitally available. You can go into the Red Book. If you're concerned about a student, if a student's concerned about themselves, if a faculty member is concerned, they can go right to the Red Book, find the resources they need, find the referral information they need to see to it that these needs are met. Cognito is a suicide prevention platform, tremendously successful nationwide. We are now partnered with that platform to deal with one of the most tragic and pressing of student welfare needs. Our student support team, led by Rick and his team, are always available to help students in need, whatever the nature of that need: academic, financial, personal, psychological, situational. And then finally, our care team, what used to be called the Behavioral Assessment Committee, has been reconstituted the care team. Consult, assess, respond, educate. Consult, assess, respond, educate. This team meets every week and deals with those students who are struggling, who may have behavioral issues, who may literally be under discipline, to see to it that we are doing everything we possibly can to ensure their success and their well-being. The Student Affairs team does remarkable work here, and again, I want to salute Rick and his team. Great job. Thank you very much. And then there's the nature of student life broadly. I could come up with an infinite array of examples. Let's just mention one. Close to 12,000 students last year participated in an array of events and activities. We have well over 350 organizations hosting thousands of events in a given year. I'm particularly struck by the efforts of our Center for Civic Justice, which in its efforts to get students involved in the electoral process enabled us to achieve a 450% increase in voter turnout last year. That's terrific. That's the kind of engagement we want to see from our students. So great work by the Student Affairs team. Another key aspect of student life, intercollegiate athletics, and I just want to mention a few highlights of the past year. And I start just by reminding everyone that our student athletes, when they come to Stony Brook, as I like to say to the faculty and staff with whom I meet, they're not making a 4-year decision when they come here. They're making a 40-year decision. They're making a lifetime decision to come to Stony Brook. The fact that they're student athletes means, of course, that they have a particular set of commitments. But our commitment to them is no different than our commitment to those students who aren't involved in intercollegiate athletics. And I'm very, very proud of what our athletics team has been able to accomplish with respect to the student athletes at our university. You can see here in the past year improvements in grade point average and academic accomplishment. We've had a couple of student athletes who are outshining the average student population across the organization, and those metrics continue to improve. Very, very proud of the intercollegiate athletics team in that regard. And then, of course, on the field, on the court, in their competition, many of our programs excelled last year. The women's lacrosse team, women's soccer team, women's volleyball team all won championships in our conference, America East. The men in baseball, lacrosse, and soccer also won championships. We're very proud of all of those teams. And because of that success on the field and on the court, we were able to receive the America East Conference Commissioner's Cup last year. You see our AD, our athletics director, Sean Heilbrunn, receiving the cup from the conference commissioner, Amy Huchthausen. Very proud of Sean and his team. I want to give a shout out to all of them. Great work. So this brings me to the concluding points I'd like to make for this year's State of the University address. And first, I'd like to, of course, start with an historical reflection. I mentioned earlier, I'm an economic historian, so I like to indulge in some historical parallels. And I'd like to share with you something that I actually shared with a group of colleagues when I first joined the university in the fall of 2016. And that concerns our existence, our identity as a public university, as part of the land-grant system of universities in our country. I think most of you know that the so-called land-grant universities, the public universities of all the states in the United States, were created by an act signed in the summer of 1862 by Abraham Lincoln. It was called the Morrill Act, named after its primary author, a Republican congressman from Vermont named Justin Morrill. That act provided for land grants to be given to each of the public universities created in each of the states to begin the process of elaborating a network of universities that would facilitate and support the mechanical arts and the economic welfare of the states. That's in the actual wording of the act. That act is part of our legacy as a public institution. It's part of the legacy of every public institution of higher learning and research in the United States. I draw your attention to it because of the timing of the passage and signing of that act. July of 1862. 2 weeks before President Lincoln signed the act, 20,000 men had died in a farm field outside of Shiloh, Tennessee, in one of the opening engagements of the Civil War. That battle decided nothing but it certainly signaled to the nation that the Civil War was going to be a very bloody and difficult affair. Indeed, just a couple of months after Lincoln signed the Morrill Act, at Antietam, Maryland, another 25,000 men died in a couple of hours in a farm field. The nation was in for a very, very, very difficult few years. And yet President Lincoln and his party and the political leadership in Congress, they somehow found the forward-looking insight and courage and determination and commitment to see the future that we embrace and we sustain today. And I reflect on that often, thinking that even in the midst of the troubles and difficulties we face today, budgetary, operational, legal, cultural, problems with public relations and communications, differing perceptions of the role of higher education, all of those challenges and struggles. Surely, if Lincoln and his generation could see the future in the midst of the tragedy they were living in, we can see the future despite the challenges and difficulties we have today. That's one important observation I wanted to share with you. The other concerns, as you see here in our final slide, our roots as an institution. We were founded as a teachers' college. We were founded to train high school teachers in the so-called STEM fields, the sciences, technology, engineering, mathematics. Those are our roots. That's our legacy. But the interesting thing today, as we've evolved into a world-class research university, is that everything we do spans far beyond and engages with, at the same time, the STEM fields that were originally our roots. A few examples. I mentioned energy earlier. Research on energy discovery, energy storage, energy distribution. Well, that's paralleled by the fact that in our world today, struggles over energy storage, energy distribution, energy generation frame a lot of the geopolitical conflict and military confrontations in our world today. So as much as our colleagues in engineering are working on batteries, for example, we have colleagues in political science, sociology, and history who are working on the clash of nations and regions over energy resources. That's one example of interdisciplinarity here. In environmental sciences, as we study the impacts of climate change, sea level rise, shifting populations, we know that much of what's being driven in the way of migratory patterns, struggles over population change, even cultural and linguistic change, is paralleled by research being done in our humanities and social sciences faculties on the impacts of those very changes. Working in one area is the same in many respects as working in the other. We can't understand these phenomena without linking them. Finally, another example, artificial intelligence and machine learning. We have great colleagues who work in this area in engineering and in the basic sciences, but we also know that these areas of inquiry require in-depth analysis of the socioeconomic and political implications of artificial intelligence, struggles over the control of data, the meanings of artificial intelligence for inscribed bigotry and misunderstanding and implicit bias regarding others, and the ethics of data analytics. Our institution is particularly well poised to deal with these issues. And as I often like to say in my office today, we are not Setauket Tech, okay? We're Stony Brook University, and the operative word there is universe. We are better poised, we are well poised to do cutting-edge research, scholarship, and art making in all of these areas of concern in our world today, precisely because of who we are, precisely because of where we came from, and precisely because of all the things that we do. We should never forget that. And in the course of the 6 decades or so that have defined our legacy and our trajectory as an institution, I think we should always remember that contrary to what some say, our university demonstrates not only the very best of what American higher education has to offer, but the array and indeed the total 360-degree richness of what American higher education has to offer. And that too is part of our mission, our legacy, And indeed, it's our story. I want to thank all of you for your time today. I hope you'll have a little time to join for some refreshments and some conversation next door. Most of all, thanks for being part of this wonderful and spectacular institution we call Stony Brook University. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.